The thunder cracked like a gunshot outside my window, shaking the old Victorian house I'd inherited from my folks in this godforsaken corner of upstate New York. I was midway through a bottle of cheap bourbon, staring at the faded photo of me and Ralph grinning like idiots at our high school graduation, when the knock came. 3 sharp raps that cut through the storm like a plea for mercy. Heart pounding, I yanked open the door to find him there, soaked to the bone, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, eyes wild and blue as the lightning flashing behind him, whispering, "Please, man, I just need a place to crash till the rain stops. I'll be gone by dawn, I swear." That was Roy, though I didn't know his name yet. He looked like he'd crawled out of a noir film, all sharp jawline and haunted gaze, water dripping from his dark curls onto the welcome mat that read "Home Sweet Home" in chipped red letters. I should have slammed the door. Strangers in Milford didn't just show up on porches during nor'easters, but something in his voice, raw and edged with desperation, hooked me. "Get in before you drown," I muttered, stepping aside, my own voice rough from disuse. It had been months since I'd said more than "order up" at the diner where I slung hash browns for tourists who thought our town's covered bridge was quaint. He stumbled inside, tracking mud across the hardwood my dad had laid with his own calloused hands before the cancer took him. "Thanks," he said, peeling off his jacket to reveal a threadbare t-shirt clinging to his chest like a second skin. Up close, he smelled like wet earth and cigarette smoke, the kind that lingers on truckers hauling freight down I-87. I grabbed a towel from the linen closet, the one with the faded Mets logo, and tossed it his way. "Alex," I introduced myself, because in Milford, you didn't let folks in without at least that much. "Roy," he replied, scrubbing his hair dry, those blue eyes flicking up to meet mine for the first time, direct, unflinching, like he was sizing up whether I'd bolt him out into the gale. We ended up in the living room, me stoking the fireplace while he huddled on the sagging couch, steam rising from his clothes. The flames cast shadows that danced across his face, highlighting the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the kind you get from a bar fight or a bad fall from grace. "What brings a guy like you to Milford at midnight?" I asked, handing him a mug of black coffee strong enough to strip paint. He took it, fingers brushing mine. Electric, accidental, but it lingered in the air between us like the ozone from the storm. "Running," he said simply, no bullshit, staring into the fire. "From Buffalo. Job, the whole mess. Figured a nowhere town like this wouldn't ask questions." I nodded, because who was I to judge? My own life's wreckage was scattered around us. The stack of unpaid bills on the coffee table, the guitar gathering dust in the corner since Ralph moved to Albany for that fancy law gig, leaving me to rattle around this house alone. Ralph, my best friend since we were kids stealing apples from Old Man Hargrove's orchard, the one who'd held my hand through Mom's funeral and whispered, "You're not alone, Alex, not ever." We'd never crossed that line, not really, but there'd always been something unspoken, a warmth in his brown eyes that made my chest ache. Now he was gone, climbing corporate ladders while I scrubbed grease traps. Roy sipped his coffee, wincing at the heat. "You got a kind face," he said, and damn if it didn't hit me like a sucker punch. In Milford, folks called you son or buddy, never kind. We talked then, halting at first, him about the auto shop in Buffalo where he'd welded frames till his boss's wandering hands got him canned, me about the diner shifts that blurred into nightmares of what-ifs. The rain hammered the roof like it was trying to bury us alive, but inside, the fire crackled, and his laugh, low, unexpected, cut through it all. By 2 a.m., he'd crashed on the couch, and I lay upstairs in my childhood bed, listening to his breathing sync with the storm's rhythm, wondering what the hell I'd just invited into my life. Dawn broke, gray and sodden, the kind of upstate morning that clings to your bones. I found Roy in the kitchen, rummaging through my fridge like he'd lived there forever, cracking eggs into a skillet with the ease of someone who'd fended for himself too long. "Figured I owed you breakfast," he said over his shoulder, that scar catching the weak light. Pancakes followed, flapjacks, we called M here, drowned in Aunt Jemima's from the pantry. We ate at the scarred oak table where Dad used to quiz me on multiplication, the silence comfortable now, broken only by the drip of the faucet. "You're not from around here," I said, not a question. His accent was pure Rust Belt, vowels flattened like the fields outside town. Nah, born in Detroit, but life's a pinball machine, bounces you everywhere. He leaned back, fork dangling from his fingers, and for a moment, his guard slipped. Vulnerability flickered in those eyes, the kind that makes you want to reach out to steady whatever's breaking inside. What about you? This house screams stuck in the past. I laughed, bitter. Family heirloom. Dad died last year, Mom too before that. It's mine now, for better or worse. The words hung heavy, and he reached across the table, his hand covering mine. Warm, calloused from tools, not keyboards. That sucks, Alex. The kind of suck that hollows you out. We spent the day like that, trading stories over coffee refills, the rain easing to a drizzle that painted the windows silver. He helped me fix the leaky gutter Dad always swore he'd get to, our shoulders brushing as we hauled the ladder from the shed. Up on the roof, Milford sprawled below us. The white-steepled church where we'd all pretended to pray away our sins. The mill ruins by the creek where kids still snuck smokes. Beautiful in a broken way, Roy murmured, wiping sweat from his brow. I glanced at him, wind tousling his hair, and felt it. That pull, magnetic, forbidden in a town where queer was still whispered like a curse. I'd known since 16, buried it under flannel and football cheers, but Roy? He wore it like a badge, casual mentions of ex-boyfriends slipping in like they belonged. By evening, the storm had cleared, leaving puddles that mirrored the bruised sky. We walked the block to O'Malley's, the dive bar with neon signs buzzing like angry hornets. Beers flowed, Genesee, local and cold, and pool cues clacked as he schooled me on 8-ball, his hip bumping mine in the crowded space. Folks eyed us, the newcomer with the city edge, but Roy didn't care. He slung an arm around my shoulders after sinking the 9, breath warm against my ear. You're all right, Alex. Real all right. My pulse thrummed, heat rising that had nothing to do with the whiskey shots chasing the loggers. Back home, the fire roared again, embers from the night before. We sat closer this time, knees touching, his confessions spilling like the bourbon we passed between us. Last guy I loved? He sold me out to his preacher dad. Said it was for my soul. Roy's voice cracked, fists clenching. I thought of Ralph, his easy smiles hiding whatever storms brewed in that golden boy heart. People suck, I said, and he turned, eyes searching mine. The kiss came soft, tentative, lips brushing like an apology, then deepening as hands found waists, pulling us into the unknown. It was fire and rain, all at once, his stubble grazing my jaw, tasting of salt and second chances. But as we broke apart, breathless on that worn rug, a car door slammed outside. Headlights sliced the dark, and my phone buzzed, Ralph's name flashing like a warning. Alex? That you? I'm in town, surprise. His voice, warm as ever, but laced with something sharper. Roy froze beside me, the moment shattering. What the hell had I just started? Ralph burst through the door like he owned the place, which in a way, he did. Every creaky floorboard echoed our shared history. He was all Albany polish now. Pressed chinos, button-down rolled to the elbows, that boyish grin masking the exhaustion in his hazel eyes. Buddy, God, it's been too long. He enveloped me in a bear hug, clapping my back hard enough to rattle my ribs, oblivious to the tension coiling in the room. Roy stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, his easy vulnerability from hours ago shuttered behind a polite nod. Who's this? Ralph asked, pulling back, his gaze flicking between us like he'd caught a whiff of something off. Roy, friend from out of town. I stumbled over the words, heat flushing my neck. The kiss lingered on my lips, a secret branding, while Ralph's presence filled the space like smoke from his pipe. Wait, no, he quit that, but the habit of him clung anyway. Passing through. Fix the gutter today. Roy extended a hand, firm shake, but I caught the flicker, wary, assessing. Ralph's smile tightened, just a fraction. Gutter, huh? Alex here couldn't hammer a nail if it bit him. Laughter, forced from me, but Roy chuckled low, genuine. He's got other talents. Dinner happened in a blur. Canned chili heated on the stove, cornbread from a mix Mom used to swear by. We three around the table, Ralph dominating with tales of courtrooms and corner offices, his law firm chasing ambulances in the capital. Saved a guy's ass last week. DUI, but the cop's dash cam glitched. Boom, dismissed. He flexed his fingers like a magician, but his eyes kept drifting to Roy, probing. Roy parried with Detroit grit, stories of assembly lines and bar brawls. The time he hot-wired a Chevy to impress a boy who ghosted him anyway. I watched them circle, alpha dogs in my kitchen, my heart a traitor tugging two ways. Later, beers cracked on the porch swing, creaky chains groaning under our weight, while fireflies blinked in the yard like faulty Christmas lights. Ralph lit a cigarette, habit unbroken, exhaling toward the stars. So, Roy, what's the real deal? You don't strike me as the passing-through type. Roy leaned forward, elbows on knees, the porch light hollowing his cheeks. Truth? Hiding from a warrant. Petty theft? Ex's TV, after he cheated with my roommate. The admission hung, bold as brass, and I tensed, waiting for judgment. But Ralph just nodded, slow. We all got skeletons. Alex here's got a closet full. He winked at me, but it landed wrong, laced with that old undercurrent, the one where his touches lingered too long at bonfires, his just friends' protests ringing hollow. Roy excused himself early, claiming the couch, leaving Ralph and me alone with the crickets chorus. He's intense, Ralph said, stubbing out his smoke. You okay? Look like you swallowed a bee. I shrugged, the kiss a live wire under my skin. Just. Nice to have company. House gets echoey. He scooted closer, arm draping my shoulders like old times, his cologne, Old Spice, same as Dad, stirring ghosts. Missed you, man. Albany's all suits and small talk. Here? Real. His thumb brushed my neck, accidental. I pulled away, heart slamming. Yeah, real. Sleep evaded me that night. Sheets twisted like my thoughts. Downstairs, Roy's snores rumbled soft. Upstairs, Ralph in the guest room, tossing like he chased demons. By morning, the dynamic shifted, Ralph commandeering breakfast, flipping eggs with flair, while Roy tinkered with my truck in the driveway, grease smudging his forearms. I watched from the window, torn, Roy's raw edges drawing me like a moth, Ralph's familiarity an anchor I'd outgrown. He's got secrets, Ralph muttered over coffee, nodding toward the garage. Felt it. Be careful, Alex. The week blurred into a tense idle. Roy stayed, said the warrant was bluff, but his duffel remained unpacked. We fell into rhythm. Mornings with him nursing black coffee, sketching carburetors on napkins. Afternoons hiking the trails behind town, where birch trees whispered scandals to the wind. One day, by the creek where Ralph and I used to skip stones, Roy pulled me down to the bank, grass tickling our backs. You're different, he said, fingers tracing my palm. Quiet storm. Our mouths met again, hungrier now, bodies aligning in the dappled shade. Kisses that promised more than Milford allowed, hands exploring collarbones, breaths mingling like prayers. It was pure, aching romance, the world narrowing to his heartbeat against mine. But Ralph shadowed us, uninvited guest in my stolen moments. He'd drop by from his motel, bearing six-packs and suspicions. Evenings devolved into interrogations disguised as hangouts. Poker games where Roy bluffed big, Ralph folding with a glare. What's your angle, Roy? He pressed one night, cards splayed like accusations. Roy's jaw set. No angle. Just a guy who found a soft spot in a hard world. The air crackled, and I intervened, shuffling the deck to diffuse. But later, alone, Ralph cornered me in the hall. He's using you. I see it. The way he looks at your wallet when you're not watching. Doubt-seated, thorny, and insistent. Then the call came, shattering the fragile peace. My cell buzzed during a rare quiet lunch. Roy out running errands, Ralph at a meeting in town. Unknown number, Buffalo area code. Alex? This Roy's buddy. Listen, he's bad news. Stole from me too, after we. You know. Closeted prick. Pretend straight to his family. Watch your back. Click. My stomach plummeted, the sandwich turning to ash. Was it true? Roy's stories of exes twisted now, his touches suspect. I confronted him that evening, voice shaking as thunder rumbled anew. A friend called. Said you're a thief. Liar. His face crumpled, eyes storm dark. It's bullshit, Alex. Ex's revenge. He's the one who outed me to my folks, got me disowned. But the seed sprouted, mistrust coiling like kudzu. Ralph arrived then, sensing blood in the water. Told you. he whispered as Roy stormed out to cool off. That night, alone with Ralph's comfort, his hand on my thigh felt like betrayal's prelude. "Let me stay," he murmured, lips too close. I shoved him away, fury boiling. "What the hell, Ralph? This isn't us." His eyes flashed hurt, then steel. "Maybe it should be. He's poison. You deserve better." The words ignited something primal, and I yelled, "Get out." He left in a squeal of tires, but the damage festered. Roy returned at dawn, apologetic, arms laden with diner takeout, my favorite, biscuits and gravy. We made up in whispers, kisses sealing cracks, but the fracture lingered. Days later, a letter arrived. Pink slip from the diner, downsizing. Broke, I leaned on Roy, who pawned a watch, family heirloom, no big, to cover rent. Guilt gnawed. Was it theft by proxy? Ralph texted, saw him at the pawn shop. Running game? Paranoia bloomed, arguments erupting like summer storms. The breaking point loomed at the county fair, corn dogs and cotton candy masking Milford's underbelly. Roy and I wandered the midway, his hand brushing mine in the crowd, a stolen thrill. Ralph appeared, drunk on cheap ale, slurring accusations. Thief. Liar. A shove, then fists, Roy dodging, me pulling Ralph back as cops loomed. Humiliation burned. Roy vanished into the night, duffel in tow. I chased, finding him by the Ferris wheel, lit like a confessional. "It's me or him," he said, voice breaking. The choice gutted me, but I chose. Whispered, "You." Ralph's glare as we left seared like Judgment Day. The fallout hit like a freight train derailing in slow motion. Ralph cut me off cold. No calls, no drive-bys, just a single voicemail deleted unheard, his absence a void that echoed louder than his presence ever had. Milford buzzed with whispers. The fair scuffle made the local rags police blotter, disturbance at Harvest Fest, with my name in parentheses like a footnote to scandal. Folks at the grocery nodded awkwardly, eyes sliding away, as if I'd caught some queer cootie from the stranger who'd upended my world. Roy and I holed up in the house, curtains drawn against prying eyes, our days a cocoon of tentative healing. He opened up more then, layers peeling like onion skin over late-night teas. Chamomile, his grandma's cure-all from Detroit tenements. Grew up in a factory shadow, he said one evening, cross-legged on the floor amid scattered takeout boxes. Dad welded Chryslers till his lungs gave out. Mom cleaned motels, praying rosaries for my face. The scar above his eye? A hurled bottle from an uncle who screamed, "Freak," when Roy brought home a boyfriend's photo at 16. Ran to Buffalo for air, but air's just recycled lies. Met that ex, thought he was safe. He wasn't. His voice trembled, and I pulled him close, our foreheads touching in the lamplight, breaths sinking like a shared pulse. It was intimate, not carnal, souls brushing edges, mending frayed threads. I shared too, unburdening the weight I'd carried solo. The night Dad found my hidden copies of The Advocate, his silence heavier than any sermon. Mom's teary, "We love you anyway," undercut by the church flyers she left on my dresser. Ralph knew. I admitted, Roy's head on my chest. Always knew. Thought it made us closer, but it just complicated. Roy's fingers traced lazy circles on my arm. Complicated's code for scared. He loves you, Alex, in his way. But love shouldn't cage. Wisdom from a man who'd fled chains. It settled deep, reshaping my regrets into resolve. Work dried up entirely. No shifts, no tips, just eviction notices piling like autumn leaves. Roy suggested we bolt. Head west, California sun, start fresh. The idea dazzled, a highway mirage of palm trees and possibility, but roots ran deep. Dad's tools in the shed, Mom's quilt on the bed. "Give me time," I begged, and he stayed, taking odd jobs. Fixing tractors for farmers who grunted approval but crossed themselves when he left. One afternoon, he returned mud-splattered, grinning with a wad of cash. Old Ford coughed back to life. Felt good. I kissed his temple, tasting sweat and triumph. Our evenings filled with dreams sketched on fridge notepads. Tiny house in the Sierras, him wrenching bikes, me writing the stories I'd shelved since community college. But secrets have a way of rotting from the inside. It started with a knock, not thunderous like Roy's arrival, but insistent, laced with authority. "Sheriff Harlan," Potbelly straining his belt, hat in hand. Alex, son, need a word. Inside, over weak Folgers, he unfolded the why. Roy's warrant wasn't petty. It was fraud. Bounce checks from a Buffalo garage he'd co-owned. Partners claiming he'd skimmed till it folded. Ex's doing, mostly, Harlan allowed. But paper's paper. Extradition pending if he doesn't square it. Roy, eavesdropping from the stairs, went ashen. I fixed it, paid back last month. But the cop shrugged. Courts move slow. Might want to lawyer up. Panic clawed us. That night, arguments flared. Me accusing, why hide it? Him retorting, didn't want to scare you off. What we had was real. Real, yes, but tainted now. Trust eroding like creek banks after flood. I called Ralph in a fever, voicemail after voicemail. Need you. Help. Silence answered, a betrayal sharper than any blade. Days blurred into stakeouts. Me scanning the road for patrol cars. Roy pacing like a caged wolf. Intimacy fractured. Touches turned tentative. Kisses shadowed by what-ifs. The misunderstanding deepened when a package arrived. Brown wrapped, no return address. Inside, photos, grainy prints of Roy in Buffalo, arm around a woman, her hand on his knee at a company picnic. A note in block letters. Family man? Ask him about Sarah. My world tilted. Confrontation exploded in the kitchen, photos scattering like confetti from hell. Who the fuck is she? I roared, voice cracking. Roy's face drained of color. Sister. Half-sister, dad's a fair kid. We posed for the shop promo. Made me look straight for clients. Proof? A birth certificate crumpled in his wallet, faded and telling. Relief crashed, but fury lingered. Why not say? All these games. He sank to the floor, head in hands. Habit. Hiding survival. Thought you saw me, really saw. I did see, but the damage spiderwebbed. Ralph finally called then, voice clipped. Heard about the warrant. Deserves it, thieves and liars. His venom stunned, laced with something personal, jealous. What's your stake, Ralph? This about me or your ego? Silence, then, always about you. Since we were kids. But you chose him. The admission hung, a bomb detonated too late. Betrayal doubled, Roy's omissions, Ralph's unspoken claim. I hung up, chest heaving, and found Roy packing. Go if you have to, I whispered. He didn't. Instead, he held me through sobs, our love a raft in the tempest. The climax brewed at the old mill, ruins where Ralph and I once carved initials into beams. AR plus RL, eternal as adolescence. Roy suggested it for clarity, a neutral ground to hash the fraud mess. Dusk fell purple as we arrived, gravel crunching under tires. Ralph was there, silhouetted against the creek's murmur, flask glinting. Brought your bow, he sneered, but his eyes, red-rimmed, haunted, betrayed the bluff. Words flew like arrows. Roy defending his innocence, papers in hand. Ralph accusing theft of my heart. You left him rotting here. Roy shot back. I showed up, saved him from your ghost. Fists clenched, then Ralph lunged, not at Roy, but me, grabbing my collar in a desperate grip. Tell him, Alex. Tell him it's always been us. The plea broke something maternal in me, pity mingling with rage. It was never just us, Ralph. You hid behind friendship, let me drown alone. He staggered back, face crumpling like wet paper. Roy stepped between, protective, but the sheriff's cruiser crested the hill then. Lights flashing, warrant served. James Roy Harlan. Wait, Harlan? The name clicked, same as the sheriff. Nephew? The cop's face twisted, family ties, cover up. Misfiled. He grumbled, cuffing Roy loose. Go, but don't come back. Freedom, but at what cost? Ralph fled into the night, sobs echoing off the stones. Roy and I drove home in silence, the mill fading like a bad dream. Yet the high tide of emotion crashed. In the driveway, under stars pricking the ink-black sky, Roy turned to me. That was it, the storm. We weather it. I nodded, pulling him into an embrace that sealed fates. But dawn brought the twist. A letter from Ralph slipped under the door. Forgive me. I called the ex, planted the photos, the call. Jealousy's a bitch. Albany's done. Coming clean, to everyone. Love you always. Brother. Betrayal's architect, my oldest friend, unraveling his own web. The letter burned a hole in my pocket all morning. Ralph scrawled confession a grenade with the pin half pulled. Roy found me on the porch swing at noon, staring at the road like it owed me answers, his touch tentative on my knee. "Sheriff's kin, small world, huh?" he said, attempting levity, but his eyes searched mine for the fracture. I handed him the paper, words blurring as he read, jaw tightening with each line. "Son of a..." He torched us for what? A crush. Rage simmered in his voice, but beneath it, sorrow. For me, for the boy I'd lost in that best friend facade. "Not a crush," I murmured, voice raw. He thought it was love. Twisted kind. We drove to Albany that afternoon, the thruway a ribbon of asphalt unspooling under summer haze, Roy's hand steady on the gearshift. The city assaulted us. Honking cabs, sidewalks thrumming with suits and students, a far cry from Milford's hush. Ralph's apartment loomed in a brick high-rise, doorman eyeing us like vagrants. Upstairs, the door swung open before we knocked. Ralph, unshaven, hollow-cheeked, a bottle of Jameson half-empty on the coffee table. "Knew you'd come," he rasped, stepping aside, defeat in his slump. The place screamed success, leather sectional, abstract art from galleries I couldn't afford, but it felt sterile, a stage set for a man playing house with his demons. Confrontation unfolded in fragments, accusations hurled like courtroom barbs, Ralph's law degree useless against raw truth. The photos? I hired a PI, Buffalo Contacts. The call? Spoofed number. He confessed it all, voice cracking on the jealousy that had festered since our prom night, when I danced with a girl to blend in, his heart splintering in the bleachers. "Watched you pine, Alex, over boys you never named. Thought if I waited, you'd see." Roy paced, fists balled, but held back, letting me lead. "You destroyed us," I said, not yelling, just stating the ache. "For a fantasy. I'm gay, Ralph, have been. But you? You could have been family, not this poison." He collapsed onto the couch, head in hands, sobs racking that polished frame. "I know. God, I know. Came out to the firm yesterday. Partners patted my back, but the whispers. It's over. The firm, his golden ticket, tainted by his own hand." Pity stirred, unwanted, mingling with fury. Roy knelt then, surprising us both, hand on Ralph's shoulder. "Hurts like hell, brother. Hiding eats you alive. But sabotage? That's cowardice." Ralph looked up, tears carving tracks, and for the first time, I saw him, stripped, human, the kid who'd shared my bunk bed during thunderstorms. "Forgive," he whispered. I couldn't. Not yet, but I didn't walk away. "Time," I said. "Earn it." We left him there, door clicking shut on that chapter. The drive home a catharsis of quiet talks. Roy's secrets spilled fuller, the garage fraud, half his fault, creative accounting to save jobs, backfiring when partners bailed. "Should have trusted you from jump." I squeezed his hand. Lesson learned. Both of us. Milford welcomed us with fireflies and familiarity, but changed. Diner rehired me part-time. Sheriff avoiding eye contact at the pump. Ralph sold the Albany place weeks later, moving back, crashing on couches while job hunting in Syracuse. Awkward coffees followed. 3 of us at O'Malley's, beers thawing the ice, Ralph's apologies a daily ritual. I was scared, he'd say, and we'd nod, the wound scabbing. Fall deepened, leaves carpeting the yard in crimson and gold. Roy and I built something real amid the decay. Weekend drives to the Adirondacks, boots crunching leaves, hands linked without fear. One evening, in that park by the covered bridge, tourist trap turned sanctuary, he dropped to one knee, not with a ring, but a promise, a silver wrench etched, ours to fix. "Marry me, Alex?" Not fancy, but forever. Tears pricked. I pulled him up, kissing under the arch where lovers carved hearts. "Yes. Hell yes." Ralph walked me down the aisle 6 months later. Small ceremony in the backyard. Mom's quilt as altar cloth. Milford's busybodies pretending shock, but toasting anyway. He gripped my arm tight, whispering, "Proud of you, brother. For real this time." Roy waited at the end, eyes shining, and as we vowed, simple words, in storms and sun, the town blurred into cheers. No grand climax, just quiet triumph. Betrayal mended into brotherhood, secrets aired like laundry on the line. Years folded like well-worn pages. Roy's garage thrived in a leased spot by the creek, his welds holding trucks together as surely as he held me. Ralph clerked for a judge, his coming-out op-ed in the local paper rippling waves. Kids in Milford whispering thanks in passing. We three, scarred but standing. Holidays with turkey and truths, Ralph's toast always. To strangers who become home. That rainy night, it knocked open doors I didn't know were locked, flooded my life with chaos. Yes, but drained the stagnation too. Love, it turns out, isn't flawless. It's the grit that polishes you raw, leaves you gleaming in the light. Now, porch swing creaking under our weight, Roy's head on my shoulder. I watch storms brew on the horizon, not with dread, but anticipation. We've weathered worse. And in the quiet, with Ralph's laughter echoing from the kitchen where he wrestles pie crust, I know. Speechless? Nah. Grateful. Every thunderclap a reminder. We're still here, unbroken.